Hello and welcome to another video in a series in which we take a look at all the enemies in the first God of War game. Today we'll be looking at the Satyrs and Gorgons, to name a few. The first of which we'll be taking a look at are the Harpies, a very annoying enemy type that we see throughout the game. Couldn't find any specific name for these two variants of the Harpies that I'll be showing, unfortunately, so I'll be naming them myself. The first variant of the Harpies I'll be calling Susan. We encounter this variant at the beginning of the game, on the boats of the Aegean Sea. As you can see, the Harpy doesn't look very intimidating. It's thin and looks very frail. It also doesn't have any armour. Its feet, however, are the only threat that it has, with its razor sharp claws. Despite that, they aren't very deadly in game. They're quite weak compared to previous enemy types that I have shown. Harpies are more annoying than deadly. This here is the only attack animation this variant has. Here in this animation, it turns to fly back before spinning around to charge forward with its feet up ready to attack. In the browser it is stationary, but in game it charges towards Kratos. This is what it looks like in game. This death animation here is one all the Harpies share. This happens when you grab the Harpy. Kratos will grab it by its wings, forcing it to the ground with his foot before ripping its wings off, ending the life of the Harpy. This is it in game now. As you can see, it's more brutal in game. Here we have our next variant of the Harpies. I'll be naming this one Sandra. We encounter this variant in the Temple of the Oracle in Athens. There isn't that big of a difference between Susan and Sandra, except for the colour. She has more feathers, and that this variant has some more unique attacks. This attack here is when the Harpy swoops upward into the air before crashing down to the ground, causing a fiery explosion that can damage Kratos if you're not too careful. This is it in game. As you can see, in game the Harpy gains a fiery ball around itself as it gets ready to slam. After the impact you could also see what appears to be a small amount of lava spit out from the impact. It looks much better in game, as you can see. This animation here is when you get caught by the Harpy. It grips onto Kratos' shoulders before pecking his face, then pushing off of him, causing him to slam down, hitting the ground with his body. This is it here in game. This animation here is when you successfully wiggle out of the previous animation. By doing so, Kratos will grab the Harpy by its wings and rip them off, before discarding them on the ground. This is it in game now. I quite like this animation. I find it satisfying, and that's due to how much I find these enemies annoying. Next up we have the Gorgons. This variant is simply called Gorgon. We encounter this variant in Athens. As you can see, the Gorgon is a hideous enemy type, with it being half woman and half snake. The stomach of the Gorgon is gone. All that is left is what appears to be the flesh that's covering the spine. The weapons it has are its elongated claw-like fingers, and its spiky protrusions on its tail, and of course its gaze, out of which can turn Kratos into stone if you're stood in it long enough. Here in this animation, you can see the Gorgon pull back before lunging forward, swinging its claw-like hands in one quick, deadly succession that can damage Kratos quite a bit if the player is not too careful. This is it in game. This animation here is similar to the previous one, except here the Gorgon pulls away before launching quickly forward, swinging its hands downward. This is it in game now. Here we have the last attack of the Gorgon that I'll be showing. Here in this animation, the Gorgon makes use of its lower half by swinging around its tail, making good use of its spikes. Here it is in game. Here we have a death animation. As you can see, the Gorgon simply collapses back on itself, swinging its arms like it's trying to balance itself, but is unable to before hitting the ground. I quite like this animation for its simplicity. This is it in game. Here we have a bit more of an extreme death animation. The Gorgon falls onto its back, twitching around, suffering before it comes to a stop. I also like this animation. The suffering of the Gorgon is conveyed through the twitchy movements of its body. Just shows how much pain it must be in. Here it is in game. This death animation here is caused when you've dealt enough damage to the Gorgon to initiate the QuickTime event. Here Kratos grabs the Gorgon and slams it down to the ground with full force, before jumping onto its back, removing its head from its shoulders. This is in game now. As you can see, it's much better and more brutal in game. This next variant of the Gorgons is called the Gorgon Assassin. We first encounter this one in the Challenge of Atlas in Pandora's Temple. There isn't that much of a difference between this variant and the last. Their attacks are the same and so are the death animations. The only real difference is their visuals. This variant is a dark blue, whereas the last one was a dark green. However, I prefer the colour of this one compared to the last. This next variant is called the Desert Siren. We first encounter this one in the Desert of Lost Souls. Here we have what appears to be a woman in a dress, with her long hair covering everything but her mouth. The way the siren moves is effortless, swaying from side to side, almost like she's dancing. The way the lower half moves shows you that she doesn't have any legs. This point is proven further in some more animations that I will be showing. To me, this animation is very creepy and very beautiful at the same time. The way it's moving, swaying its arms and body again, like it's dancing as well as singing, but its incredibly wide open mouth throws me off and makes me feel uneasy. This is it in game. Here in this animation you can clearly see that the siren is struggling. This animation happens when you're able to grab the siren. Kratos, once he has grabbed them, will squeeze the siren before forcing the siren to bend backwards, breaking its back, releasing the soul of the siren. Here it is in game. It's very brutal, as you can see. This here is the next variant of the sirens. From what I could find, this variant is simply called Siren. We encounter this one at the Titan Horn, just before we were able to go to Pandora's Temple. This one doesn't look too different from the Desert Siren, as you can see, only the colour of its dress. It still has that creepy but beautiful vibe about it, however. Here are two of its attacks. Here in this animation, the siren spins around and swings its hand. In the game, the siren throws what appears to be a ball of light, perhaps a ball of electricity, at Kratos. This is both of these animations in game now. Here is another attack animation. Here you can see the siren put its arms out in front of it, opening its mouth. In game, the siren does this animation to suck the player in, a way of pulling you closer. Once the player has been brought closer, Kratos will be stunned momentarily, of which gives the siren a chance to attack again. I find this animation very interesting. Here it is in game. As you can see, the siren can also suck in other enemies too, as seen by the other sirens getting pulled in. Again, I find this very interesting. I wonder if that was intentional. This animation here is a taunt. You can first see it when you regain control after the horn cutscene. Here in this animation, you can see the siren open its mouth to an inhuman amount of length. In game, they let out an ear-piercing scream, which adds to their creepiness. This is it in game. Here in this animation, you can see the siren move its arm from left to right, before raising them up majestically into the air to finish off the animation. In game, when this animation plays, it summons more balls of light that get sent towards Kratos, damaging him. These orbs can also follow Kratos if the player decides to run away. Here it is in game. This animation here doesn't play on this variant of the Siren. It only plays for the Desert Siren. For some reason here in the browser, it only plays for this variant instead of the Desert Siren. Here you can see the Siren twist left to right before stopping and letting out a scream. This is it in game. As you can see, the scream that the Siren does stuns Kratos for a second and causes the screen to go blurry for a split second, meaning a Siren's scream can be very painful and even disorientating. This adds a small amount of lore to the Siren, which I enjoy a lot. I enjoy this animation here. This happens when you're able to grab the Siren. Once grabbed, Kratos will pull the Siren towards him by grabbing its arm before kneeing it in the stomach, bringing the Siren lower. Kratos will then proceed to slam the Siren's head into the ground several times before throwing it away from him. This is in game. In this death animation here, Kratos will grab the Siren and pierce his blades into the chest of the Siren, before kicking it away from him and swinging it back around to the ground and ending the life of the Siren. Here it is in game. Here we are now onto our final enemy type of the video, the Satyr. We first encountered this variant on the Cliffs of Madness. I really like this enemy as a whole visually, the way it looks, its idle stance to its weapon. The armour on this enemy is spread out. It has some on its wrists, torso, calves, shoulders and finally its helmet. The colours on it too, being gold, purple and blue, give it an almost Egyptian type of feel, of which I like. The way it stands holding its double-bladed staff behind itself is very intimidating too. Shows to me that this enemy isn't the type to be messed with. Unless you're Kratos, of course. Here we have one of its attack animations. Here you can see the Satyr swipes its staff before spinning it around the front of itself, then ending it with it spinning the staff around its back as it crouches down. The fluidity of this animation and many others I will be showing is another thing I really enjoy about this enemy type. This is it in game now. Here in this animation for some reason the Satyr's staff is not in its hands. I am unsure as to why that is. As you can see, the Satyr pulls the staff back behind itself before charging it and itself up into the air in a spin motion, before crashing the staff into the ground in one quick movement. This is it in game now. This is a short animation here. The Satyr spins the staff behind itself before bringing it forward, ending the animation by swinging it up into the air. It can launch Kratos backwards if the player is not too careful. Here it is in game now. This animation here is interesting, due to the fact that the Satyr splits the staff into two in both of these animations, swinging them quickly as it spins itself around towards Kratos. This shows us that the staff the Satyr wields not only can be used for a fairly long distance attacks, but for also close range attacks as it uses it as a dual wield weapon. Here are both of the animations in game now. This animation here is interesting due to how the Satyr balances itself onto its staff, as if to show off, before it jumps off spinning its staff as it flips towards Kratos. This is it in game now. In this attack animation here, as you can see, the Satyr sticks its staff into the ground, swinging itself around kicking, then doing a side flip before landing back onto its feet. This can damage Kratos if the player gets caught in this attack. This is it in game. Here we have one of its parry attack animations. You can see the Satyr spins itself and the staff around quickly before charging the staff forward like a spear. This is it in game. This here is another one of its parry attacks. You can see here again that the Satyr makes use of the ability to dual wield by quickly swinging the staff multiple times. This can be a deadly attack if the player gets caught. Here it is in game. This here is one of its taunt animations. This animation here I've showed previously in the video, but I do still like how it balances itself on its staff, showing how confident or even how cocky this enemy actually is. This is in game. Same can be said here with this taunt animation, showing its confidence through the means of spinning its staff around itself, demonstrating its skill with the weapon it wields. This is in game now. Here in this animation, you can see the Satyr holding its staff close to itself and struggling before getting thrown backwards to the ground. This happens when you manage to grab the Satyr, and once you have successfully mashed the circle button enough times, Kratos will then stick his blade into the Satyr and send it flying backwards. This is it in game now. This animation here is just like the previous one, except this time once you have mashed the circle button enough times, Kratos will knock the Satyr over before using the staff to end its life. This is it in game now. As you can see, it's much more brutal in game, and you also may have noticed that Kratos actually spins the staff around himself before killing the Satyr. I found that this is a nice small detail. Here we have the final animation of the Satyr. Here you can see the Satyr splits in half, dropping its staff into the ground. This happens when you kill the Satyr with the blade of Artemis. Here it is in game now. Well, that's all for some of the strong and annoying enemy types for this video. Hope that you all did enjoy all that I showed here in this video today. I really enjoy going through and looking at these enemy types that you see in game. It's great getting a different perspective of them. Well, that's all from me, and I hope to see you all in the next video.